Hello and welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly. The Security Weekly team is taking the week off and we're sharing some executive interviews we recorded at InfoSec World 2025. For episode 435, we'll be sharing 6 of these pre-recorded interviews with you today. First, Mandy Logan sits down with Perry Schumacher, Chief Strategy Officer and partner at Ridge IT Cyber, to discuss mid-market security challenges. Then Maureen Allison, CISO at Secura, talks about the debut of security control management as a new security product category. Next, Ryan Heritage, an advisor also from Secura, also shares his thoughts on security control management. And then kicking off the next batch of interviews, Rob Allen, Chief Product Officer of ThreatLocker, discusses misconfigurations with Mandy and how they're often overlooked by defenders and abused by attackers. Then Patricia Titus, Field CISO at Abnormal AI, shares how cybercriminals are weaponizing generative AI. And finally, Dr. Ron Ross sits down with Mandy to discuss his keynote at InfoSec World about the critical systems, what he calls below the waterline systems that form the foundation of the digital world: hardware, firmware, secure components, and things like that. I hope you enjoy watching these executive interviews as much as we did making them. Big thanks to Mandy Logan for doing all these interviews, going to InfoSec World and putting them all together along with our production team. And enjoy your break. We'll see you the week after Thanksgiving.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days. Cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your defenses. With ThreatLocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. Our Zero Trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots. Just proactive, built-for-now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock.
Welcome to InfoSec World 2025. We're here recording live from the CyberRisk TV studio on the expo floor at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Orlando. I'm your host, Mandy Logan, and joining me for this interview is Rob Allen, Chief Product Officer at ThreatLocker. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Mandy. Good to be here.
Thank you. It's wonderful to see you again. I almost wore my ThreatLocker t-shirt, too. So I have been given direction that we are to discuss misconfigurations.
You say that as if we're even remotely going to possibly stick to that actual direction.
No, but we're taking
let's
this
run
as
with
the
it.
kernel from which we will grow.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good way of describing it.
Okay, so with your background, expertise, and your positioning with ThreatLocker, tell me like a good synopsis of what is a misconfiguration, what is going on with it, and where do you see it going, and what are the problems?
So interestingly, misconfigurations from our perspective, misconfigurations can be something that somebody has done with our tool.
Okay.
That's one kind of misconfiguration. So somebody sets up...
You mean like them not using ring fencing right?
That would be an example.
Okay.
So some of the configurations we check are, is this thing ring fenced appropriately? Another example would be, and these are things that we've actually seen happen. So somebody accidentally sets up a policy to allow anything to run from the users folder. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not a great idea. And the issue is previously you would have no visibility of that. I mean, you could go looking through all your policies, trying to figure out why things are allowed. But the likelihood is you're probably going to find out about something like that when it's too late. So when it's been misused. On top of that, you have other misconfigurations. So not ThreatLocker specific misconfigurations, but like Windows misconfigurations.
Okay.
You should set encryption on this, or your password policy isn't long enough or complex enough, or whatever the case may be. The problem with misconfigurations is very often you don't find out about them until it's too late, until they've been weaponized, until they've been misused. So the idea of our DAC product is to check for those common misconfigurations, both ThreatLocker ones and also not ThreatLocker ones, tell you why they're important. So give you some information, like this is a summary of it, this is why this is a risk. Map it against compliant frameworks as well. So if you're looking to, work towards CIS or NIST or whatever the case may be, but say, well, look, this is what NIST says about this type of configuration or misconfiguration. This is what CIS says about this type of misconfiguration. And also to give people actionable steps. So this is how you fix this problem. So it's no good just saying, this is the problem, go figure it out yourself. We'll actually explain what the problem is, why it's important, which frameworks it applies to, and tell people how to fix it, whether it be a ThreatLocker solution or a outside of ThreatLocker solution.
So fantastic. And is that then different or synonymous with improper provisioning?
It is. I mean, people talk about
if we're
improper
talking
provisioning. They talk about configuration drift is something that people will commonly say, well, look, is this going to help us with configuration drift? The way I'd like to describe it is it's more like a fresh set of eyes. It's a new, fresh look at the configurations within your environment. So you think you're adhering to NIST, for example. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but this is actually going to check 170 different things every single day on every single machine. So it will both catch misconfiguration or configuration drift, but it will also be effectively a fresh set of eyes. You say you're adhering to this framework, maybe you're not. And here is the evidence, here is the proof, here is how many of your machines this problem exists on, and here is the solution to it.
That sounds very relieving to me, and yet it makes me question with what is DCA pulling from, especially from the things that are not within the ThreatLocker system. Like, so if you're looking at, well, this is just a Windows misconfiguration, has ThreatLocker's team compiled, hey, these are the most common misconfigurations in a Windows environment or in this situation or in your servers? Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. And as I said, there's 170 of them today, and there's more being added
I thought that was
single week.
specific to NIST. Okay.
No, it's not specific to NIST. This is across all the different frameworks. I mean, some of them are common across frameworks. Block inbound RDP, for example, stuff like that. It's going to be common against frameworks, or, administrators or users have administrative privileges and they shouldn't. Again, that's common across frameworks. But yeah, it's most common ones, but it's also being added to daily and weekly. So as I said, today it's 170 things that we're checking. Tomorrow it might be 200, 250. We're adding to that list all the time.
Now, within the ThreatLocker dashboard, is that a separate report or request that is run, or is it part of everything?
It is included with all modules. Anybody who's got ThreatLocker will have this defense against configurations dashboard available to them where they get all that information. So it's not an extra product. It's not something that people need to pay for. As I said, our mission with this is to identify weaponizable or problem configurations before they get misused, before it's too late.
And what have you seen as far as success with this?
We start with many things. We start with ourselves. So we run these things in our own environment. Our patch management was another great example of that. Whereas we were using a third-party patch management tool, it was checking all our machines every day. It was coming back every day, every week, every month, going, everything is fine, everything is up to date. Then we set our own patch management loose on it and discovered all of this random software sitting around in people's downloads folders and portable applications and applications sitting on people's desktops that were not patched. So we use ourselves as a test case with this. And again, we set defense against configurations in our own environment. And a lot of stuff showed up that we didn't even know was there. And again, that's the whole purpose of this. That's the whole idea.
Say, how satisfying that is.
Quite.
It's horrible to realize that it's like that.
Quite.
But how satisfying.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As I said, the patch management is probably the best example because it was literally setting us side by side with another tool that we used every single day that we thought was doing its job. And then all of a sudden we went, it was missing all of these things.
Oh, wow. So thinking of that makes me think of a part from the cybersecurity trends report released here at ISW. And I want to refer, actually, I think I have the numbers here. Nope. Maybe I got rid of it. And it showed that 35% of human employees were paying for their own AI tools.
Well, believe it.
So we're discussing this part of extreme shadow IT. To me, that becomes not just that, they are doing this on their own. They are doing it probably for a purpose, but How does ThreatLocker help with that situation?
It's probably so we this year introduced a web control product, and it's probably the most commonly asked for category number one, but it's also the most common question we're asked in terms of where users can go on the internet is how do we block users from accessing LLMs and AI tools? So web control basically does that. We've got an entire category. It will block all of them except the ones that you want people to be able to access. So if you say, yeah, we use Copilot, you can create an exception and say, yeah, Copilot is accessible within my environment. But again, look, a lot of this comes down to, yes, you can apply controls, but then somebody goes home and they're doing work from home and then they're using their home computer and then decide to go on to whatever the case may be. I mean, it's something internally that we have, obviously from a product perspective, AI is not our thing. It's not, we don't need to use it, I suppose, is the way to describe it. But some of our product team may find it beneficial. So we've got paid subscriptions. So, I mean, it's kind of a procedural thing as well. Now, obviously, we've got very clear directions as to how these tools should be used and not used. But I mean, realistically, if people will benefit from them, then I would say that in a lot of cases, it would be in organizations' best interests to just pay for it for people. Don't have them having to go and pay for ChatGPT themselves, just pay for it for them. It's $20, $30 a month.
Fair.
It's a relatively easy solution to the problem, as I said, or just block them entirely.
Very true. Now, for our audience, I'd like you to clarify ThreatLocker's stance on AI and what you mean on why you don't need to use it.
So a lot of the tools that are out there today lean on AI to help them make decisions about what's good and what's bad. So is this
You
thing
mean that's
good?
separate from just looking at the summary or finding anomalies of using the aggregated data that they're able to use?
Absolutely. They're basically saying, look, the behavior of this thing, I'm going to use AI to try and figure out if that is behaving badly, or it's something that should be stopped, or something that should be blocked or deleted, or whatever the case may be. So because of the approach that we take, which is to deny first, so deny by default, we're not depending on making decisions about what's good and what's bad. I mean, fundamentally, we don't care about what's good and what's bad. We don't care if the thing that you're trying to run is the nicest, best, least likely to be weaponized software in the entire world. We're still going to block it because fundamentally blocking things is what we do. But because we take that approach, because we deny by default, we're not depending on making decisions about what's good or what's bad. And the problem with making decisions is it only takes one decision to be wrong for it to be game over. So it doesn't matter if you're right 99.9% of the time, it's the 0.01% of the time that it's wrong that will get you.
Then what is ThreatLocker's methodology for going, well, here's the information that you need? If you're saying you're not looking at something that's right versus wrong, then what is the actionable information provided?
So, as I said, deny by default means that pretty much everything that's running will be blocked by default. But equally, we try and give both users and administrators information about what is trying to be run. So, for example, say a Chrome extension, Cooper, the coupon clipper. Not a lot of people know that's made in China. So we have a product research team that are basically, they have the rather unenviable task of researching every piece of software, every Chrome extension, everything they can find, and giving people information about what it does, what it has access to when it's running, and where it's made. So again, the fact that it's made in China is obviously relevant and might influence a user's decision as to whether or not to request permission to be able to use it. So we literally pop up on the screen when they get a block, this is Cooper, it's a coupon clipper, it's made in China, and it can access your passwords, your website, whatever the case may be. But equally from an application...
I'll clarify then, you're keeping the decision in the human's
No,
control.
we are educating the human user in whether or not the thing that they're asking for is actually something they should be trying to run on a business computer.
Okay.
On top of that,
So
when
like
it comes
informed consent, a new part of that.
to some extent, yeah, to some extent. But on top of that, from an administrator perspective, we give people a testing environment where they can run software. So it's effectively a VDI where they can detonate software, see how it behaves, see if, all the files that this piece of software installs in your machine, do any of them match virus total, for example. So basically a safe and secure environment to actually run software, check it out, see if it behaves. The other thing is most applications in most environments that people run will match one of our built-ins. So like say I try to run Creative Cloud Installer, the likelihood is that will match one of our built-ins because that's an application definition that we manage. If I try and run some dodgy cracked version of Adobe Creative Cloud, it's not going to match our built-in. So that is something that should immediately set off an administrator to go, hold on a second, this isn't actually a legit version of this software. So again, it comes down to informing both the user to try and stop them unnecessarily asking for things that they shouldn't have, and also the administrator to help them make an educated decision as to whether or not this user should be allowed to run this thing. I didn't even mention Insights. So one of the things we introduced this year at Zero Trust World was what we call ThreatLocker Insights, which is, how to describe this? So all of our customers' data is completely siloed. So organization A and organization B, they are completely separated, but there is certain information that is relevant across all environments. So, how often a file runs, or has this file ever been seen before, or when was it first seen in the wild? That kind of information is valuable to an administrator making a decision. So with Insights, what we did is we limited certain information, like, as I said, things running, where they're accessing the internet, what other programs they interact with, put it in a big central database, do funky stuff with it that I don't quite understand. I know cubing was part of it. I don't even know what that means, I will confess. But basically anonymize it, cube it, and make it available for everyone. So you can see in one screen, in one button click, how often this file has been run across other environments, how often this file is permitted across other environments, denied, when it was first seen in the wild, how it usually behaves. And that's really valuable information, because previously, if we wanted to see a particular file, where it ran, where it got blocked, we could run searches across 5, 6, 7, 10, 12, 15, 20,000 SQL databases. That would take days. Whereas with Insights, we can give them that actionable information immediately.
Okay, I want to end on that point because that is blowing my mind a little bit.
It's the biggest of big data.
It is. And then I'm going, wait, and you're still not using AI to aggregate, summarize, catalog, or do anything else. So this is fascinating. It makes me want to know about your infrastructure more too. Well, Rob, thank you so very much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure, Natalie. Thank you.
Wonderful. To find out more about ThreatLocker, please visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker ISW. Thank you for joining us. And for you viewing from home or work or a cruise ship, thank you for joining us here. Please visit securityweekly.com/ISW.
Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software deployment and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter. METER.
Welcome to InfoSec World 2025. We're here recording live from the CyberRisk TV studio on the expo floor at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Orlando. I'm your host, Mandy Logan, and joining me for this interview is Perry Shoemaker, Chief Strategy Officer and Partner at Ridge IT Cyber. Welcome, Perry.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am so very glad you're here. And as we got to briefly touch on before we began recording, I was very intrigued and encouraged by your background precisely because of the non-conventional nature it has. That is something near and dear to my heart, as I ended up here in a very exceedingly non-traditional way. And find it to be such a mark of even cybersecurity and defense and offensive strategists, like whenever we have that mental ability to not just pivot, I'm going to use the corporate term, not just pivot, but to understand that there's a lot that goes into survival, adjustment, preparation, and then being able to actually substantially build what will work long term. It sounds to me like a lot of your focus has gone into not just what you're doing at the moment, but what will take care of large organizations and even mid-sized organizations.
Yeah.
Before we get too deep in the technical things, will you tell me like at least 3 key points from your unique trajectory that you pull from, like whether that's from pumping gas in the Amazon, intriguing things in Africa,
Yeah.
the aeronautical space, like tell me.
Well, the first thing is be a student. I think that's, when you have a background like mine and you've done so many different varied things, you have to be willing to study. Stay up late at night, figure out what it is that you need to be doing, how you need to be doing it. I think another thing that I learned by doing all of that is kind of just don't have sacred cows. Don't marry your ideas. Because it will stop you from being able to study properly. When you're pivoting, a good idea in this sector may be a bad idea in another. And it's just the same idea, right? And based on context is how you actually need to approach a problem. And I think those are probably 2 of the key things, between doing all the weird things that I've done that kind of stuck with me. And then anything, philosophy is a great guide for life.
It very much is. So with philosophy, your mention of that, what is Ridge IT's philosophy when it comes to really supporting mid-sized organizations?
Yeah. Well, first off, I like to, when I'm talking with my clients, the idea is you got to have like a target. Like, so what's the goal of cybersecurity? Why are we doing this in the first place? And I like to simplify it because it can get very detailed and complex when you go into the nuance. Everybody has a tool,
Right.
Zero Trust, Comply to Connect. There's acronyms galore. But at the end of the day, if we're in cybersecurity, we're after 2 key objectives. One is we need to keep the business running. So no ransomware, no interruptions. That's what our job is. 2 is protect the data. So if we can funnel every solution that we look at underneath those 2 primary objectives, things make a lot more sense, right? So it's kind of keeping things simple because they do get complex as to how you go about doing it.
Right.
But understanding that really is all you're doing kind of can help you simplify your way through that logical path you got to go to make a decision.
Well, absolutely. And then do you feel that when you're discussing options with your clients, you are providing guardrails that give them the most useful outcome?
Well, that's always the goal, right? But the reality is that when you're talking to a mid-sized company, there's more than just, I want the best solution out there that can secure me, because that comes with a price tag. And every one of us are dealing with a budget. So it's about working through these compromises of, hey, I can't quite afford this solution. It's the best one. But maybe if I buy this one and I configure this that way, I can get a similar outcome while staying within the budget that my executives have blessed me with, and not going over it. So I think a lot of it is understanding enough solutions and enough configurations to help people kind of navigate that space.
Well, that sounds like a very fulfilling and a substantially grounded way to allow mid-sized organizations who I have a lot of respect for. I mean, I have a lot of respect for all individuals who are beginning companies or
Yeah.
are in any portion of such extreme development. So small, medium, large, there
Yeah.
is so much to handle.
Yeah.
But mid-sized companies, I feel like, there's that little, the forgotten stepchild,
Yeah, no, it's true.
middle child, that they may be so robust in what they actually want to bring to market and bring to the world.
Yeah.
But they do generally have not necessarily the, I never want to disparage any person, but they won't have the cream of the crop pick necessarily if
Yeah.
you're going based on standard metrics that are valued. Now,
Yeah.
you may run into a situation, as I have seen often in dealing with security practitioners and researchers and in public sector, where you have individuals that are heart-based or they have a motivation toward what they are doing.
Yeah.
And they feel extreme stress around the giant attack surface they have to handle,
Yeah.
with the smaller budget and perhaps only a 3-person IT.
Yeah.
And that's not even, we're not discussing just security. We're talking
Yeah.
an entire,
Yeah. That's their IT
that's
staff.
the whole IT
Yeah.
staff.
The networking guy's part-time gig is security. Yeah.
Exactly. So what have you found that Ridge IT really excels at whenever you're discussing options with a team who has such streamlined resources and functionality, but may have a very deep desire to perform extremely well?
Yeah. I mean, when you look at that, there's several levers we can pull to kind of lower operating costs, right? So you've got the first thing, I call it build the house, right? So what does it cost to do an implementation? And that's all kind of one-time fees. And then after that, it's the operational cost that really matters.
Okay.
Because that's what hits the bottom line over the next 3, 4, 5 years for the organization. Each one of these tools, they have integrations, APIs that we can leverage that make them a little bit more robust. And by doing that, we can lower the human cost on their side, right? So we don't need quite as many people inside of your IT staff because we've integrated the solutions where, say Zscaler talks to CrowdStrike and tells it to do an action based on what it saw. Well, that's one less person that really has to take an action. That's less time you spend because the tools are interacting with each other and doing that task. So you're more supervising the thing that was done than trying to find out what was wrong and do it yourself. So there's a cost savings there for them and being able to get that 3-man team to be more functional. And then there's the typical part where it's like, hey, we'll monitor your environment for you. You're good. We do it for a lot of people. So economies of scale. We have qualified people with playbooks. We make sure that we clear the house every time we see a detection and we can add on to your team. And the key thing with us that I think makes us a little bit different, a lot of people, when they engage you, they want to be like, oh, well, I own the environment. I'm going to take away your admin rights and I have the admin rights. And to me, that never made sense as an entrepreneur myself. If you try to tell me you're going to take control away from me and I'm going to pay you for the privilege, it's just not going to go well, that conversation. So our business doesn't engage in that. We really look at it as you've got 3 people, which you should for your continuity. You should never allow me to replace your team. I think that's bad for your business. And then we're an extension to them. And that's really where we strive to be. We have specialized skill sets that those 3 people have no reason to develop because they're taking care of your ERP, be it SAP or QuickBooks.
Right.
They're taking care of Salesforce. And the guy learned Salesforce last week.
Right.
And by learn it, he watched a YouTube video.
Absolutely.
Right. So he's having to have this breadth of knowledge between those 3 people. And now you've got this one area of cybersecurity that if you fail, it can have significant consequence to your business. He doesn't have the time. So you get the tools, you set it up, get some economy there. You look for a good partner that actually wants to do a value add situation and you partner there and you can get that at a cost that most small businesses can find very palatable, right? And that's what we try to do.
And so in a few words, what is your passion at Ridge IT that like we do this portion on top of it? This is our bread and butter because we are so good at it?
I mean, there's a lot, really. We partner with certain vendors where we have a deep skill set that even the vendors themselves will tell you that we're better at deploying their solutions than they are.
Understood.
So we've really taken pride in selecting just a few of the best in breed, and we built out a team to support each one of those solutions. So if you buy something from us, you're like, hey, I want to buy CrowdStrike or something like that. You're when you call us and need help or advice or something, we actually have the people that will have the answer, that know how to do the deployments, the implementations, the best practices. You have that all in one place, unlike some vendors, and there's nothing wrong with this, that you buy the solution, and if you call for help, they'll giggle and they're like, that's really cute, but we sell it, we don't really support it. Right. So we support everything that we have. And I think that's kind of, I guess that's our calling card. And we've been doing zero trust since before it became a marketing buzzword. So pre-COVID, we developed a zero trust architecture. During COVID, we got to test how good it actually was. Because during COVID, everybody got budget. Everybody wanted to move to least privilege access, zero trust, comply to connect. Much of the same concepts under different banners, right? And we've seen our our solution work over and over again. We're employing it to the government. So I think that's I guess, a specialty from a technical perspective is creating that architecture, that ecosystem for our clients.
That's gorgeous. And so during that time at COVID, in my own ecosphere, in my brain, how it goes on, I think of the mid-sized companies that were faced with such an extremely complex pivot to remote work,
Oh, yeah.
to cloud storage, to many other things that hadn't been the norm. And
Absolutely.
they were then stretched not just wide, but like
Yeah.
to the depth and height that no one could have expected.
Yeah.
And that to me makes, just as a person, we're not even going into the technical details and into GRC and policies and everything else that has to be handled. Were there any particular moments that stick out with mid-sized companies during COVID that you go, wow, we were able to help the human firewall and help their
100%.
security?
I mean, we get phone calls. During COVID is when a lot of people realize that free VPN doesn't work very well when you try to scale it across the company, right?
Absolutely not. Right.
So they wake up one morning and they're like, "Hey, we can't go to the office, but everybody somehow needs to connect." And that free VPN just ain't cutting the work. And so they're desperately calling, like, how can I get something? And if we all remember during COVID, try to go buy hardware. That was fun. It's going to come from China. Oh, great.
Excellent.
Yeah, on a boat. Okay. Yeah. So let's just wait until after COVID, it will arrive. So they couldn't turn to those things. And so with a couple of SASE solutions, and that's when SASE started really growing in the market, right? So we were able to turn people around where they're calling on Friday going, I don't know how we're going to continue running the business. Do you guys have anything? And go, sure. Here it is. It's affordable. If you sign this today, by Monday, you're running again. And we did that over and over and over again for hundreds of companies, getting a phone call within 2 to 3 days, getting them up and running and operational with their people working from home. And that was I didn't get to sleep a lot during COVID. It was a very intense time for the company, but we helped a tremendous amount of people when they didn't know what SASE was and how quickly we could deploy this and expand your I don't care that your people are at home. I don't care where they're sitting. It doesn't matter to us. They can go to not the moon. There's no internet there, but short of someplace without internet, you can go anywhere you want. We're going to protect you. You're going to be fine. You're going to be able to get access to your resources. And we did that for a tremendous amount of people.
How comforting, and going with the idea that security is an emotion or it's a feeling.
Yeah.
That is beneficial.
Yeah.
Now, we have pretty much abundantly used our time.
Yeah.
And so for our audience, I want to encourage that they look into the keynote that your CEO gave earlier.
Absolutely.
And I want to mention a few things we didn't get to. From the keynote, I was curious about the 12-week deployment timeline and what that particularly referenced. So perhaps our audience can contact your company and understand that more.
Yeah.
And I also understand that is there some kind of technology partnership you have with Gartner?
No, we work primarily with Zscaler, CrowdStrike, not with.
Okay, not with Gartner. Okay, and what else in the last 10 seconds that we have, what else would you really like to drive home to the hearts and souls of those people on the front line trying to figure out what to do?
Don't lose faith. They'll give you budget eventually. No, when you're looking at security, again, I just like to drive home the first point is when communicating to some executives, we've got to understand the purpose, right? Which again, business continuity. The reason that you have me here as a cybersecurity professional is to make sure that this business continues to run. There's no disruption in operations. And the second reason you have me here is to make sure that all the key data of this company remains secure and within this company at all times. And just really using that as your tool internally to justify why you need things. I think an executive, from my perspective, has a little further understanding of that and kind of going down that talk track and what lies in, and maybe that will be helpful to them. I find it helpful to some of our clients.
That makes complete sense. And I'm thinking too, we didn't get to touch on it, but being able to get the executives to understand that the benefits that come with AI and also the risks in adjusting there.
Yeah.
That's a whole other topic we need to get to, but thank you so much for your time today, Perry.
Well, I appreciate it.
So to find out more about Ridge IT Cyber, please visit securityweekly.com/Ridge ISW. Thank you, Perry, for joining us. Now, Thank you all for joining us at InfoSec World 2025. And please visit securityweekly.com/ISW for more information. Stick around. We'll be back after a short break with more interviews.
AI has officially moved past the hype. The question isn't should we use AI anymore, it's how do we use it in a way that truly helps. Meet Delinea Iris AI, practical AI to secure the modern enterprise, designed to work quietly in the background, making faster, smarter access decisions, reducing risk, and giving your team time back. This isn't AI for show. It's purpose-built for identity security, boosting productivity without adding friction. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Delinea.
Welcome to InfoSec World 2025. We're here recording live from the CyberRisk TV studio on the expo floor at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Orlando. I am your host, Mandy Logan, and joining me for this interview is Maureen Allison, advisor to Sakura. Welcome, Maureen. How are you?
I have many titles, so
You do?
it's okay. I'm an advisor to Sakura and a number of other small VCs helping them along.
But you have been and held fantastic and substantial roles as a CISO yourself.
Oh, yeah, no, I did that. I retired and I've recovered from being a CISO.
How did you recover? How did you do that?
Well, it took a while. So, of course, I was at Johnson & Johnson right as we were doing the vaccine. So that was a lot of stress. And, there's always I'm okay. But the reality was it took about 6 months afterwards for me to be able to breathe and read and feel comfortable and not feel like attached to my cell phone or my computer all the time.
Oh, absolutely. I would. It boggles my mind to think about the intricacies that you have faced and with your team during that time. And of course, you had such a substantial pathway toward getting to that point, right? You pulled from many things that you had put forth effort to learn through decades.
Oh, it's absolutely correct. I mean, one of the things I always said, I was about ready to retire before COVID struck. And then my company, Johnson & Johnson, said, okay, we're going to make a vaccine. And I thought to myself, if not me, who else could be in this position? And this is not the right time to leave. So I delayed my departure a couple of years, but I always felt like I could reach into my quiver and pull out another arrow. I understand about insider threat. I understand about nation state attacks. I understand about this. And it was bringing all of that type of elements together over the course of the career.
And now with that, was there more focus then on your part being the securing of the pipeline that allowed the vaccines to go out, or more on the adjustments that needed to take place in the Johnson & Johnson workforce?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. We're done here. We understand now.
It was really, to make a drug at a pharmaceutical corporation takes 10, 15, 20 years normally.
Right.
And we were able to accelerate the pipeline. And again, Johnson & Johnson used some of the things they had learned in the past. They made a vaccine for Ebola.
Right.
It's not commercial, but it was to help Africa and to reduce Ebola spread. And so we used our quiver and our arrows to be able to create what was needed for the vaccine. But when you accelerate any process that takes decades in a company, you will see things like, oh, okay, that gives us an opportunity here. And so we spent a lot of time looking at opportunities to make sure that the vaccine could be produced and distributed without interruption.
Beautiful. And I will say from my viewpoint, being able to pull off such a grand scale and myriad organizational point type of mission, that is separate from gender, sexuality, identity as a woman. That's just taking care of what is needed because you had those skills and those quivers. Yet I also am curious because you were part of the first co-ed class at West Point. Am I correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. And Now, I will pull a little bit of a parallel from my own life, not in the same scenario, but I came from very male-dominated industries, and what I had done previously was 3% male. I'm sorry, 3% female. 3% female across the board. So when I ended up around ethical hacking and cybersecurity and looking into this career field, the fact that it was 24 or 25% female was like, oh, this is a haven. This is magnificent.
We made it now.
Made it. And because I felt that coming from construction industry that was further entrenched, that coming into cybersecurity focused, it was a new industry. It was less than 20 years old, and there were more pivot points available. So I'm curious, with going through the first co-ed class at West Point, do you feel that that resolve and the determination of what you knew you could do is part of what have carried you forward to right now, being able to advise numerous boards at once?
You know, Mandy, I don't know how many people have told me, oh, you only got the job because you're a woman.
And
I laugh. And I'm a West Point graduate, and I have electrical engineering.
Right.
And I was an FBI agent and head of security for 3 major corporations. Yeah, probably because I'm a woman. And, you know, I think people will throw things at you when they feel intimidated by you.
Right.
But I'm not going to be intimidated by their lack of knowledge and expertise. And what I see is we move into those spaces and we work well. Sometimes it's harder for us. Maybe sometimes it's a little easier. But for the most part, we have the skills and expertise, and we just have to use them. And it's when we get entrenched in what others think and concerned with it, and I'd just be like, scoff. No, I don't care. I'm just moving forward. Good for you. My company's got it.
Correct. I identify with definitely having that, no, this individual, you just provide what you are naturally capable of providing.
Right.
You move forward. And I will say, to your point, like, I was told repeatedly growing up that to excel in the male-dominated world, I needed to be 10 times better than the average guy that would apply for it in order to make it, which meant now I look back and I go, oh, I literally had the skills and the ability to a substantial degree. And that's incredibly comforting. And kind of moving away from that, I want to take a part of that into the discussion on AI and AI adoption. Now, stay with me here, because I do have a purpose on this, and it is not to overwhelm you. In my anecdotal experience, there's a lot of times where I feel a traditionally more female-appearing brain will adapt to AI in a different way than a traditionally appearing male brain will. And a lot of times I see that they get substantial results from the same AI tools that their male counterparts have. Have you noticed that at all, or is that just something that I seem to notice?
I look at it a different way. I don't think it's on a line of male and female. Okay. I think there'll be people with different backgrounds will look at it differently.
Right.
And people from different regions of the world will look at it differently, depending upon what your whole what you bring to the table.
Right.
And that's part of, like, as a CISO, one of the things was the diversity. It wasn't about color, it wasn't about male or female. It was, what would somebody from India think versus somebody from Japan versus someone from the United States?
I agree.
To look at the wholeness of the situation. And I think the same thing happens with AI. I mean, you know, I go into business meetings and CEOs are like, you know, should we even look at this thing called AI? Well, if you don't look at it, you're going to be out of business soon, my friend, because everyone else is looking at it. Versus if you talk to a bunch of physicians or in the medical field and like, oh my God, AI is going to revolutionize how we look at cancer. We can solve curing cancer. And I think those are the important pieces of it, where you have to weigh at, hey, maybe we shouldn't use this, to, hey, this is the best thing since sliced bread, and it sits somewhere in the middle with some controls, right, that we get the best out of it.
And I fully agree. And I generally go back to that each individual neurological system, every person's wetware operates consciousness differently
Right.
and interacts with data and technology differently. Now, before we began recording, you mentioned some about what I would summarize as being able to get clearer or cleaner data from generative AI or AI bots and agents. And we discussed it as it's even helpful for us as individuals getting to translate our thoughts into corporate ease.
Oh, exactly. I mean, I think that's one of the greatest is a lot of corporations have the chat GPT as part of their systems. Now they have controlled what the data goes. That there's no outbound, there's not always outbound data, but it's learning about its company. So when you have someone from IT who can only speak, IT geek or cyber geek,
Right.
and you have to present something, because that was one of my hardest jobs as a CISO was I've got to take what my SOC analyst has just told me, and I now have to translate it into what I'm going to tell the CEO. What's the risk? What's important? What does it mean for our company? And that would take me hours. If I could do it in 5 minutes, I'd be in. I'd love that. Sign me up for that AI.
For sure. And now, for myself, I feel like there's a certain amount of mental load and fatigue that is removed from me and allows me to be a clearer operative in whatever thing I am taking care of because I use AI or my bots or I used specific LLMs.
Right. Oh no, it's magnificent. Especially, IT folks are not always known as the great literary writers, and to be able to take something you've written and to be able to give it to AI, and it comes back with something that is intelligent, comes across very knowledgeable and story-like, versus it being very IT. I love it. I mean, I've always loved my IT engineers. They know they're my faves, but don't put them in front of the board to talk about the business risk of NotPetya.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And the inverse. I mean, I feel like it also gives the perhaps non-technical, at least not cybersecurity, ingrained executives a chance to go, hey, Grok 4.5 expert, give me more detail on what
does this mean?
What does this mean? Because I actually do want to support our security teams. I actually do want to get and understand what's going forward.
Well, and you also have some cybersecurity folks that may be more on the what I call like if there's any vulnerability whatsoever anywhere, then you're going to go to security hell, which may or may not be really the business risk. And so it also helps the business executive to be able to understand what are you really talking about and what is the risk there. And, one of the things, no matter what the risk was that came out or what vulnerability was, the first 24 hours was what does this mean to my company? Is this really do I have this technology that they're even talking about?
Right.
When NotPetya came out and it was MEDOCs. So we run in SCCM, where do we have MEDOCs? And it comes like, we have one group in China and one group in the Ukraine. I'm thinking it's not the one in China. So now let's focus on the Ukraine. And when we find these things out, it is extremely helpful. And then what is the business risk here?
Oh, yes. And I'll speak very quickly on that because one of my philosophies now is that the use of AI can actually unburden the workforce. We know this, and we're looking at automation. We know that the data-heavy and driven decisions can be aggregated and much more easily used by looking at summaries from AI versus humans having to try to go through the bog of all of the data.
Right. Well, how about when you're trying to set something up, right? I mean, remember in the days when you'd have to take out the warranty books and you're reading through on the setup versus the QR code or versus the YouTube video or
the app that you can absolutely go, oh, it takes you step by step by step. And I like to believe that at some point that means that printers won't be the death trap of every bit of technology, but I'm not sure we're there yet.
I don't know. I'm still using my printer more than I want to. HP is very happy with me.
Good. I know that you are here graciously supporting the CEO of Secura. Is there anything you can share with us right now from your prepared presentation?
First of all, and I'm going to take a little bit out of the technology side, we have a bunch of female CEOs out there in the VC world, and supporting them is absolutely amazing. And Lisa is amazing, and I'm finding it just great. She came from NSA and her knowledge and expertise. I think you're going to interview her in a little bit.
Yes.
So I find that absolutely amazing. But second is from her work and looking at how the infrastructure is secured and being able to have a technology that you can run a scan or continuous control monitoring of the infrastructure. People like to think you can set and forget the infrastructure, except that they have an entire IT department. And no matter what you do, no matter how good you are at it, things change in the night. And to be able to go through and have a software that's going to help you and assure that nothing has changed, especially in the critical infrastructure areas, is amazing.
It is. That is... Since my heart is near and dear with critical infrastructure, absolutely. I will say for our audience, make sure to check out Secura's SCM platform, a new form of software that will provide, is showing great promise and ability to provide a much more thorough coverage, as you're mentioning.
Exactly. And we used to do this before, remember? It used to be security technicians checking every piece of equipment and going in. The auditors, we don't tell the auditors about it because then they can do it automated too. But when you have that automated, you can now look at and make sure you're secure, your platforms are all secure in the way you intended, without having to manually go in and check.
And that's gorgeous and relieving. And I think it goes along with what I say as all of evolution shows that self-healing systems are the ones that dominate.
Right.
So we will continue with that.
It's secure by design, not by chance.
Exactly. Thank you, Maureen,
Thank
very
you.
much.
It's a great mandate.
This was wonderful. Thank you to our audience for joining us. For all InfoSec World 2025 coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance, please visit securityweekly.com/ISW. Stick around. We'll be back right after this short break with more live interviews.
Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1Password. Cyber threats follow a familiar path, an attack chain reused across the globe. Fortra knows how the enemy operates, so you can stay one step ahead. Our advanced security solutions detect, disrupt, and defeat threats at every stage, protecting your data, business, and customers. With Fortra at your side, the battle ends before it begins. Visit securityweekly.com/Fortra to see how you can get total attack chain coverage.
Welcome to InfoSec World 2025. We're here recording live from the CyberRisk TV studio on the expo floor at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Orlando. I'm your host, Mandy Logan, and joining me for this interview is Ryan Heritage, advisor at Secura. Welcome, Ryan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I am so very glad you were here. And one thing I am interested in is you're now advising at Secura. You have your eye on what is going on here and what's coming in the future, coming off of Cyber Command. But how did you get here from infantry?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Good question, and it's been an interesting road. So started off in the infantry for about 25 years, for the first 25. And then as I was finishing up regimental command, so you can imagine commanding several infantry battalions, so thousands of Marines and sailors, I got a call one day from then Lieutenant General Stewart, who's unfortunately passed away. I had deployed with him in Iraq, and he said, I'd like you to come on up to Marine Forces Cyber Command. So it's the Marine component that supports U.S. Cyber Command. And I went up as his deputy and his chief of staff. and found myself really enjoying that environment. I think taking a lot of lessons that I'd learned over the past 25 years as an infantry officer, being able to bring those into the cyber domain, and I've been there ever since. And I bounced back and forth in and out of cyber for the last probably 10 years or so. Having finished up, just retired, effective 1 June this summer.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was great. Had a fantastic time in the Marine Corps, and my last assignment was the Director of Operations at U.S. Cyber Command.
It's so fascinating. I feel like there's so many very grounded and real things that we can take from there. Because when I think of infantry, I think of a very kind of hardcore frontline, grounded take on not only thinking like the attacker, but literally having to do what is required right now with the resources at hand.
Yeah.
Does that translate well then into thinking of the cybersecurity ecosphere?
I think so. When I was a regimental commander, as a colonel, I used to tell my headquarters that if I could not talk, if I could not communicate both up and down, that we as a regimental headquarters were ineffective, that we wouldn't be able to support the battalions and the mission that we were assigned. I think that translates very well to what I did in the cyber domain. I talked a lot about fighting the network, that you have to be, it's a platform, it's a weapon system, it's a domain in which you maneuver through, and you're fighting for dominance, and really you're fighting for that decision advantage, the ability to ensure the joint force can shoot, move, and communicate while maintaining a decision advantage over our adversary. And I know in the prep we talked about resiliency. So
yes,
absolutely, resiliency is a factor, not only from a hardware, firmware, software perspective, but it's resiliency of the individual operators, the ability to revert back to, I'll call it maybe legacy ways of communicating if we are denied in a certain domain. But it's also resiliency and the ability to innovate and take advantage of new technology that's being quickly onboarded and integrated into our networks, which is one of the benefits of this conference such as this.
it is. Now, being at this conference yesterday, I had the honor of hosting the AI Summit. So speaking about emerging technologies and how it's adjusting the threat attack surface, but also how it's augmenting teams.
Absolutely.
Now that in a very simplistic way, feel like this is creating a more dynamic security posture requirement.
Right.
And do you view like going from cyber operations that you have been involved with, is there a time where you can go, well, man, it was still much more static security operations and that now we're in a much more dynamic security operations situation?
Yeah, I'd first go back and what I used to tell my Marines is, again, think of the network as a dynamic living thing, platform and space. And then you're maneuvering through it, that the domain always changes.
Right.
Whether that's you're changing the domain based on the threat, or you're changing the domain based on, or your network based on new capabilities that you're connecting to that allow you to do something that you couldn't do yesterday. In terms of artificial intelligence, I would still, I believe the attacker has the advantage still for a variety of reasons. They just need to be lucky once. They have a different risk calculus. And for the defender, and I see the gap closing as we can leverage artificial intelligence, across our networks, but also enable the individual defenders.
How does that overlap with tech debt?
Yeah, so great question. We dealt considerably on how you modernize a network at the same time you're trying to replace it. And if you don't have the resources to replace it, how then are you taking on board new technology that can incorporate and still protect that legacy infrastructure or hardware, because that is a vulnerability, and trying to deny that to the adversary is a constant challenge.
Now, you're here supporting Secura, and there was a recent announcement about the SCM platform. Will you speak more on that?
Yeah, from a secure perspective, anything that we can do to automate across our networks, the number of processes that still remain manual will be key. That agility will help. It'll help drive speed of operations. It'll help increase the level of confidence in the data that we are passing, and it'll allow us to take those servicemen and women, and civilians, and put them on other tasks that remain unfilled or gapped.
Really? Okay. This is making me think of something from the Cybersecurity Trends report that was published here at InfoSec World. And it had to do with that there was 1,600 respondents, 800 executives, and 800 were practitioners. Now, you said you view yourself as a practitioner.
Yeah, I consider, yes. I still tell folks that my kids help me with my phone.
There was one statistic in particular that I found it interesting first that they asked this question and then what the response was. And it was that 41% of Gen Z employees are actively sabotaging company AI policy.
Okay. So that's challenging. I don't know if I'd put that in the category of insider threat, but it's certainly a concern.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. It certainly is. And, the tools that can identify that sort of behavior beforehand or identify it while it's happening, absolutely critical. Still, perhaps one of the greatest vulnerabilities is that 18 inches between the screen and the back of the chair, right, is the user. And so how are you onboarding anybody? When I think about cybersecurity, for me, end to end, it starts with not only the concept of what the network is going to look like, what the end state, what you need it to do, but it's also the hardware, it's the people, right? It's the infrastructure, a lot on the security of AI. I would say, what about the security of the energy or power that's fueling that AI? Where's the weak link along that chain?
I agree. And we keep going on things that touch on you're going to have to bear with me because we're going on my memory recall of this report from a year ago, but it was the cyber resiliency report that was provided to the White House. And regarding the state of cyber resiliency, one of the points that was near and dear to my heart was that the official recommendation was in critical infrastructure situations, you must have people still trained on fully manual operation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I would say when I left, we were still training Marines to be able to do the same thing. And I do see that continuing. There's a new director in the Office of National Cyber Directorate, Sean Carncross, who is working on updating that national cybersecurity strategy. I'm confident that how we address critical infrastructure across the nation will be addressed. There has to be an understanding that, and perhaps a redefinition of when I look at critical infrastructure. Obviously, my focus has been on defense critical infrastructure. One, identifying all of that. If you think about how the Department of War mobilizes and moves people and equipment from their fort or base to a port or an airfield, how do they move that? And everything along that way, whether it's a railway station, it's the airport or port itself, it's power stations, all of that is, I think, could be considered defense critical infrastructure. And so whoever owns that particular piece of infrastructure, are they resourced? Are they trained accordingly to be able to provide the cybersecurity that we think is necessary based on the threat that's out there?
It's such a beautifully intricate proposition. And it follows so many different paths. I'm very glad to hear about that, about every single point, whether it's the transportation, the trucks, the power, the other parts. Yeah. It all comes together. I think that as an industry, we get very focused on S-bombs now or F-bombs or other things like that. And I'm going, guys, but still, you can just kill the power over here at this transfer station and you're kind of done the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add, you talk about resiliency, and I briefly hit upon it, is people. So from the threat that we dealt with, there's a lot of threats from a cognitive perspective as well. And so if you can imagine, and you saw it whether it's caused by a natural disaster or colonial pipeline, just the impact on the psyche when you don't have access to money, fuel, water, or there's a lack of trust in those systems. That can cause an impact on your psyche. So.
It does. I'll go back to, I think it was around 2010, 2011. I lived in fantastic North County, San Diego. My office was in Escondido. And one afternoon, the power went down. So figuring at the office, the power is out, it'll come back on. Well, it didn't come back on. It didn't come back on. No, what had happened was I still don't know if I know for sure what exactly happened, but it was at like one transfer station near Yuma, Arizona, a uninitiated tech had done something wrong and took out power to over 8 million people at once. And so there were no stoplights, there were no ATM access, no fuel. You couldn't buy anything at any store. Yeah. There was nothing like that. Now because I'd always driven back roads, I went over the mountains and stuff and I got home. Yeah. Right? I had basic provisions. But talking about that psyche component, I lived on a very nice street right at the cliff over the ocean. So it's an affluent, nice, simple area. And within 4 hours of getting home, the man who lived across the street had pulled out plywood and was boarding up his windows and had started taking down all of his external things and locked himself inside and padlocked. That was without having power for 4 hours.
Yes. And so I don't want to be, somebody said, I don't want to be an alarmist. I want to be a realist. So how do you prepare? How do we as a nation prepare for those? And there's adversaries, but there's natural disasters. There's aggressive squirrels that are, that are eating power lines, right? I mean, how are we resourced? And that's why I go back to having a strategy with a clear vision, end state that's resourced, I think is really important. And I know folks are getting after that.
And so you're here with Secura, and what is your focus in these days right now, here at InfoSec World?
Mine is really about the partnership. I think I see it in this conference again as a unique opportunity. What is and how are we taking advantage of the partnership between academia, private industry, and government at the federal, state, and local level? How are we putting that all together so that we can, no kidding, scale cybersecurity across the country, and also the education piece, not just academia for the education, those are absolutely critical, but academia for their ability to innovate at their school, at their campuses.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Was it more along the idea of academia being augmented so that for future education is more useful, or do you mean like this moment?
Both.
Okay.
Absolutely both. Is how are we educating tomorrow's generation to deal with what we think the world will look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, understanding the impact of artificial intelligence, but also their ability to innovate, all that great work that's happening on universities, campuses, schoolhouses across the nation. How are we bringing that in, integrating it with what private industry is doing, integrating that with your state and local and federal government and their resources? I think if we can, again, we'll go back to strategy. Mm-hmm.
But that's also community.
It is community. It's local community. So you mentioned water, right? In your local town, how is your water treatment facility protected? Is that a question that's coming up during the town hall meetings?
Right.
Should it be?
Right.
Are we talking about artificial intelligence in our high schools? If not, should we?
Fair. So with that, we're going to have to close our wonderful interview here.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan, for joining us. For all InfoSec World 2025 coverage, please visit securityweekly.com/ISW and stick around. We'll be right back.
Imprivata delivers simple and secure access management solutions for healthcare and other mission-critical industries to ensure every second of crucial work is both frictionless and secure. Imprivata Enterprise Access Management delivers simple and secure access to any app from any device with single sign-on, multi-factor, and passwordless authentication. The solution streamlines workflows, reduces password fatigue, and ensures seamless access for every identity. Learn more about how Imprivata is redefining secure access at securityweekly.com/Imprivata.
Welcome back to InfoSec World's 2025 Cyber Risk TV studio, live from Disney's Coronado Springs in Orlando. I'm your host, Mandy Logan. I also have the honor of hosting on the Security Weekly family of shows, and I have had interesting background of crashing into cyberpunk security after major crimes left me with nowhere to turn but ethical hackers. Now, in this great cyber race, as the theme of our conference has brought forward, we are working to arm CISOs and practitioners to stay ahead of threats. Now joining me is Patty Titus, the field CISO at Abnormal Security. And I'm interested to know because you have had 25 years of trailblazing, from items related to post 9/11 attacks, things with TSA, coming forward and constantly needing to monitor the current threat landscape. And I am so interested to know what is specific in your mind about Abnormal Security's focus on really helping the day-to-day implications of the security threats from AI?
It's a great question, Mandy. Thanks for asking. Abnormal has got a unique approach where traditional email security, which is our pervasive product, really looks at indicators of compromise or patterns that threat actors are using in order to get malware or phishing into a company. Abnormal took a step back and said, that's great, and that worked for a period of time, but that time is passing us by. So, and what I mean by that is threat actors are now using artificial intelligence to create crafty phishing emails, crafty social engineering, and I think this is an inflection point for us. And Abnormal's been on this journey for over 6 years, and I was a customer almost 6 years ago, where we had a problem and needed to solve it, and we turned to Abnormal to help us. But I think the difference is Abnormal's behavior analytic platform, which looks at the behavior of an individual to characterize normal behavior, and then looking at things like, where did the email come from? Is it someone you normally communicate with? What are the headers and the destinations and all the technical things that can make up indicators that the behavior is abnormal? And now coming into this new world of artificial intelligence, we need to use it in order to become defensive and perhaps a bit more on the offensive.
Oh, fair point. Really, in looking at the trends that are going on and hearing conversations here at InfoSec World and abroad, AI is an offensive sword, but either way, it can be a defensive sword that's coming at you. Yeah. Either way, you have it on both sides. But I actually want to go back to something else you mentioned, because you said that you were a customer of Abnormal Security before becoming an actual part of the securing forces of Abnormal Security. How and why did that happen?
Well, an interesting turn of events. So I've been a CISO for 25 years. I like to call myself a recovering CISO at this point, but 25 years of experience, and how could I continue to give back to the community? But actually, I was looking for something super tangible to do that made a difference. So we became a customer after we had some near misses, some close security events. But what I really love about the company is the innovation that we continue to do in the space of secure posture management. We have this very, very cool product that we released at RSA this year called the AI Phishing Companion, which actually takes a phishing campaign that's been generated against your company or an individual in your company, and it comes into the company. It actually defangs it. I think that's a good way to put that. It takes the bad stuff out of it and then sends it on to the intended victim. And then we see if the victim actually, like our employee, actually interacts with the email. And if they do, it creates an AI-generated video that pops up and says, when the person obviously has time, they click on it, and it gives them feedback on the email they interacted with to say, this was actually an email phishing that was headed toward you.
Wow.
Don't worry, we're security, we've got your back. But here's how you can spot it the next time. And then it goes through the indicators that we would use that they can understand to help unwind and unpack all of the different threats in the email so that it's real-time training. And they can start to be brought into this picture of this was actually going to happen to you as a human versus we're going to create this giant phishing campaign for everybody and we hope that it resonates with 10% of our population. Those phishing campaigns don't work. We need to get to the point where we're personalizing it based on what's really happening, targeting you as an employee. And that's a different approach to the way we've done security awareness in the past. And I think a much more tangible. And then we just are looking at what else can we do with all this behavioral telemetry? How can we contextualize that even further for our CISO community? And how can we make things better in our space? So that's really why I joined Abnormal. I love the tech. I love the company and the culture. I'm drawing energy from a lot of our employees who are just so enthusiastic about what we're doing.
Right.
And I love the technology.
I do too. So, like just hearing that and hearing about the advance of being able to extract the nefarious parts, the threat parts of the email, but then use it as an immediate teaching opportunity.
Right.
That's incredibly encouraging to me. And I'm curious, like going beyond just that training, which is enhancing real world security training, how does your software then help with compliance? Does it I don't know if it would
help me understand that a little bit more.
Well, I was thinking, okay, so if you were able to take the incoming email and you're separating out the threats from it, and those are being, I don't know, they're sandboxed or siloed, they're
removed.
They're removed.
They're actually removed. Right.
So now you have detail that is coming in on what threats you're seeing constantly. You also have the detail on what the employee what they would normally have done. And I thought, well, if you're able to take both of those parts, were you able to give detailed insights that would help with security leadership going, well, these are what we are seeing in our office. How does this impact what we need to do for compliance or regulations or changing our policies?
You are spot on.
Okay.
So that's exactly what we're doing. We have a threat intelligence team that actually takes a lot of consolidation of this threat data, anonymized from our customers. So it's taking that threat data and saying, how can we use this in our R&D and better our solutions and make things crisper and tighter? And also, are we doing enough with the behavioral data to actually that threat intelligence to enrich it and provide that back to our CISOs? So we have an analytic tool called Abby. It's an analytic tool that allows you to see who are the most attacked employees in your company. That's super powerful data for a CISO to take to the board, to our executive leadership team, and be able to show that. I heard one company, actually, it felt like a little bit of a competition of the executives. Oh, I was targeted the most last week. And
okay.
Yeah. So not that ever happens. There's not competition in our executive ranks, but, it's just an interesting point where we can get to the point of predictability. And that is where I feel behavioral analytics will take us, behavioral AI will take us to being able to be more predictive in the types of attacks. Because if we're seeing, maybe we're an accounting finance company and we provide services to financial institutions. If we're constantly seeing invoice fraud coming in, it's an opportunity for us in security to come up with better ways to inform our employees and create marketing campaigns using real data that's actually happening. Instead of, well, generally in the Verizon data breach, we know that X number of breaches happen because, but now if you can even take that down a couple layers to make it real and, again, contextualize based on what's happening to the company and who we are and my role in the company, because it really is looking at my behavior.
Right.
I can just enrich that so much further to provide better communication to our employees, to make them more digitally aware without it being overloaded with a bunch of stuff they don't need to know. Like, who's going to read the Verizon data breach other than security professionals?
And a few of us, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
I'm pretty much thinking my employees don't really care that it came from the Verizon data breach. But if I would care if it's coming from analytic data that's coming in about our company. Now I have a vested interest.
I agree.
Maybe I'm a shareholder. I mean, there's just so many different avenues that you could use to tweak that message as a CISO to your community.
And that is gorgeous. And I just can't get away from this idea that having that type of information, not just on predictive intel for threats that are incoming, but being able to really provide more predictive analytics on what your employees are facing, that taking that information there has to be a way that it helps future-proof coming technology in a way that it does help compliance boards and regulatory agencies go, oh, we do need to stay ahead of this now. And we hadn't quite gone to this depth, where you are getting depth that sounds to me like probably at least 20 to 30% deeper than other solutions I've heard of in a similar vein, with being able to pivot directly to security training. I'm not up to date on every single bit of security offerings that are out there, correct? But that is brilliant. Is there another portion of it where you see what abnormal security is doing, particularly to email security, that allows you to rest better at night, knowing we do have a bright future of incredible defenders?
I do think as our behavioral analytics, when you first plug it in, it will set a baseline. But the very interesting thing about machine learning and behavioral analytics is that continuous learning, continuous growth. So it doesn't just scan once and learn it and set a baseline. It is continuous, continuously improving, continuously getting better, continuously looking at what's targeting your specific agency, organization, or company. And I think that's a bit of the difference. We don't try to be peanut butter and smear it across the entire industry or even a vertical market. What we are saying is specific to your agency or organization or company, these are the threats that are coming, so that the messages and the threat intelligence that's specific for you, that's where you need to focus. So what it's doing is eliminating a lot of the white noise or the chaff of a lot of other security tools create noise. It's actually giving you actionable intelligence with the statistics behind it. That's the other piece of it. So I'm not really a great math person, and maybe there's a lot of CISOs that are, but statistics for executives, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for percentages, dollar figures, optimization. So those are all key things that executives are looking for. We can now go armed with statistical data. And I think that's the value proposition of being able to have, numbers don't lie. And I think that's been a hard thing for us as CISOs over my 25-year evolution as a CISO, that I've seen. We've gone from, firewalls and IDS sensors to now we're statisticians and having to be able to prove and talk about budgets and show the business value of what we provide. And I think it's a good evolution. It was destined to happen. But I think we're at another inflection point, and that is, how do we derive statistical data to prove ROI, return on investment, of those investments that our companies are making? And so that's the other part that we have to show. And that's another solution that Abnormal can add to your picture. We're not the whole picture, but we're a piece of the picture. And to me, one of the most valuable parts, because the way we communicate today is via email.
Absolutely. And in our last few seconds here, for our viewers who have not yet sampled Abnormal's offerings, what are ways, what information resources, are there trials? What is the process?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to go to the website, take a look, watch some of the demos, read some of the white papers, watch a couple of the podcasts that we have, talk to other customers. Our customers are our best sales team. Having been a customer, I will tell you, I could not sing enough praises about the product. even before I joined the company. Now it's a little bit easier because I've got a little bit more on the inside take about what's going on. But talk to other customers, come and see us at events like this, reach out to us. I would say when you think you might be ready, we have a free proof of value that we will do.
Oh, good. Okay.
So nobody wants to pay for a proof of value or proof of concept. So ours is free. Okay. We'll turn it on for 45 or 60 days. You can look at the data that comes out of it. We have a very rigorous process to communicate with people throughout that POV. So we don't just plug it in and walk away. We're going to help you understand the data and analyze the data and see what's happening. And if at the end of that, you see the value, then we would obviously like you to become a customer. But I think you have to be ready for it, because once you see the data, you will realize, even though you thought you might have good efficacy in the solutions you're using, you may see something totally different. And it may be enough to open your eyes to see what's really coming through the front door that you had hoped would be being stopped by other solutions you might have put in place. It's a defense in depth strategy.
Well, it is. And it's also a beautiful way, and a very nuanced but practical way to go. Again, we as humans have to stop our pattern seeking of, well, this is the way we've always done it. And you're now able to give more data to show, well, how we've always done it is no longer effective.
Right.
So thank you. Thank you so much,
welcome.
Patty, for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for all of you viewing. For all InfoSec World 2025 coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance, please visit securityweekly.com/ISW. I'm Mandy Logan. We will keep pushing boundaries in just a moment.
Identity and access management is hard. Whether it's administering identities, managing and controlling access, building, implementing, and enforcing policies, or governing the whole thing, IAM is often the realm of inefficient processes, bloated implementation timelines, and expensive and complex projects that struggle to solve problems. Thanks to Junto, those challenges can be a thing of the past. Junto delivers a full-stack IAM platform with a microservices architecture that delivers all of the functionality your unique environment demands, and an implementation model built for rapid and relevant time to value without requiring specialized staff and skills. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Junto.
Welcome back to InfoSec World 2025's CRA TV studio, live from Disney's Coronado Springs in Orlando. I'm your host, Mandy Logan, a very proud member of the Security Weekly family of shows, and our high output team continues to bring you best in all kinds of information related to trying to handle this great cyber race. We're here trying to gear up CISOs and practitioners to really accelerate past threats. And here I'm joined with a true icon, Dr. Ron Ross, CEO of Ron Ross Secure and a NIST Fellow. Massive congratulations, Ron, on your legendary work. And also, I'm so thrilled for your keynote this morning. And I really like the title, Igniting Change. Is there any key point from your presentation that you really want to dive into right now?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here at this wonderful conference. I mean, it's so immense, all the different vendors that are here and all the different technical tracks, and it's just a wealth of information. So I'm really excited to be a part of that. The keynote was interesting because we're kind of at a crossroads in cybersecurity now. We've got 40 to 50 years of experience, and we've done a tremendous amount of great work. There's lots of frameworks and controls and everything. I call that above the waterline work, organizations, what they do to build better programs. But there's a whole new field, what I call below the waterline, that's emerging. And this has to do with how do we develop a solid foundation below the waterline, which means the hardware, the software, the firmware, building better components, more trustworthy components, which can be integrated into our critical systems, which are going into everything from pacemakers to power plants. And that level of trustworthiness in those products and those components is critical, because if they fail, we're talking about computers driving your critical braking systems in your car. We're talking about power plants where the lights go out. We're talking about water distribution systems, spacecraft, weapon systems. So solving that below the waterline problem is really the next generation where we have to focus on. That was kind of the message this morning during the keynote.
Now, when you are conceptualizing below the waterline efforts, does that overlap with the groundwork and frameworks that you pull from when you go, yes, these are the very solid ways to handle the onslaught of attacks coming from AI and LLMs being used so much more rapidly?
Well, the threat space continues to evolve, and so those kinds of attacks are going to continue to grow, and they're going to change over time because the adversaries are always looking for new ways to compromise our systems. But all the frameworks that we've used up to this point, whether it's the NIST risk management framework or the cybersecurity framework or any of the international frameworks, all of that is good work to help secure the basic organization. But we talk about a lot about below the waterline. I call it the black box. You have a smartphone or a tablet, you have a laptop computer, you don't really know what's going on inside that device. You know, you have the user interface, you interact with it, but all of that complexity within those devices is really where the adversary can tend to exploit. That's called attack surface. And the greater that becomes with all the innovation and everything we're bringing into the new enterprises with AI applications and all that, that increases the attack surface. And so we have to find ways to make those components more trustworthy. And that involves good engineering, good software engineering, software development. And we have a lot of history and just basic concepts that we can apply to make that a better situation.
Well, you're bringing to mind several things at once, so you'll have to forgive me because I have to go. That's, again, I'm trying to pull from what I know of your background and history
Right.
and looking at this current moment and thinking about our CISO audience who are trying to engineer these high assurance systems. And what is something that you would go, you know, I can look back and see that this was a missed opportunity, and yet if it was used
Right.
now, it's proactively useful.
Right, so CISOs are obviously at the organization level, so they pretty much are dependent upon whatever the industry provides to them. They're buying all the black boxes, whether it's a software application, AI applications, AI agent technology. They're buying network components. They're buying all the operating systems. They have to go to the commercial marketplace. So it's really imperative on industry to help the CISOs sleep better at night by letting them know, how did you go about building this product that you're trying to sell to me? What things did you do? Like, did you use memory-safe programming languages? Did you use certain design principles, least functionality, least privilege? Did you reduce the attack surface of the product that you're building so it makes it less susceptible to the cyber attacks? I don't want to have to deal with those on the customer side. And so the real takeaway is industry has to do more on their end, because every time they let a weakness or deficiency through that pipeline, it becomes a potential vulnerability that the customers have to deal with. And those vulnerabilities are growing by leaps and bounds because the attack surface is growing, because we just have an insatiable appetite for new technology. We're not going to stop innovating. We're not going to stop buying all those products. So at some point, industry has to step up and tell us, what are you doing to make your products more secure? That's a big challenge for them because it doesn't always look at the bottom line. You know, they want to sell products quickly to the marketplace,
Oh, absolutely.
shareholders, stockholders, but this is not an issue that we can just let slide anymore, because everything they're building, all those computers that are going into these technologies, those are going into every one of our critical infrastructures, all 16 of those, from communications to space, weapon systems, power plants, water distribution, transportation systems. And so a failure to secure that foundational aspect of the technology can have severe catastrophic effects long term. And we, the consumers, can't always deal with those complexities. That's why this is a big issue for industry. It's an issue of legislation and regulation potentially, but also letting industry still be innovative and creative so we can keep our economic advantage. And that actually ties to our national security interests as well.
Now, in that, what is your take then on how effective are S-bombs, F-bombs, and any other bombs that are out there and being developed?
Well, the S-bomb technology, the secure bill of materials, basically, that's an attempt by the government to say to industry, we need to know more about what's inside the black box. Transparency, visibility. But the S-bombs that they've defined so far are very superficial. And we need to have a lot more information about what is the product supposed to do, how is it designed, What kind of a process did you use to develop your software? Did you bring in lots of information from code libraries? A lot of the times the developers are developing quickly through the lifecycle, DevSecOps. They've got a quick life cycle. And they're using a lot of open source code sometimes.
Right.
And they're bringing a lot of code libraries. In those code libraries or the open source code, there could be malicious code that comes in from that aspect, and they get into the development process of the system. So there are some industry players now that are addressing that problem, basically shining the light on the process, the concepts, the procedures that are used by our tech industry to produce everything that you see here on the floor today and more, the general space of technology. And so there's a lot of movement in the SBOM area, but it's just starting initial. We're just scratching the surface in that area now. We need a lot more.
Well, absolutely. And I'm curious because you're discussing so wholeheartedly about securing the components, and if it's not through the current structure of SBOMs, FBOMs, and other bombs that are available, then is there like a 3 or 4 word descriptor for what you feel will help secure the components more readily?
Well, I think overall, we need greater visibility and transparency into what these products are doing inside. Now, that doesn't mean that every consumer, the consumer's not going to be experts in the technology. They don't, they're not building code, they're not designing integrated circuits, but it's important for companies to tell the consumers what process they did use and all the things that we know as an industry reduce the susceptibility to cyber attacks and critical failures. It's kind of like when you walk down the cereal aisle in the food store, there's 100 different choices, and you can read on the label on the side of the box. You look at things like sugar, carbohydrates. Of course, cereals have a lot of that. But a lot of people look at the food labels now and make better choices on healthier foods to eat. We kind of need the same thing in the cybersecurity business. We need clear, concise labels that have been vetted by industry and our standards organizations to say, if you follow these procedures or if you do these kinds of things, then you're going to probably have a more trustworthy product. Now, it's not perfect, but this is going to be a journey. Getting greater transparency and visibility is going to be a long-standing process to get to that point. But there were times, I remember times when there were no labels in any products in the food stores. You could just walk down there and pick whatever looked good. And now we've seen an evolution. Automobile safety, the same way. My first car barely had a seatbelt. Now we have seatbelts, airbags, steel reinforced doors. We have drop-down engines, sensors everywhere. And so the combination of regulation and the industry wanting to bring safer automobiles to you as a consumer, that's a good model to follow for the tech industry now. We're at that point because nobody wants their brakes to fail at 60 miles an hour. And nobody wants a company to build a car without brakes today. It's just not, it's unthinkable,
True.
But yet we're fielding all this wonderful tech stuff without brakes, without any guardrails in many cases. And that's not a good place to be in. We have to do better.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I'm glad for all of our safety and guidelines that have developed to really further what our goal purpose is, even within cybersecurity. Security is still the health and wellness of individuals, of the human. The human factor is what we are going to secure.
Right.
And it sounds like you're very focused on the adaptability of the tech industry to react, respond, and even forecast what's coming and is useful. You just participated in the Women in Cyber Summit here this morning.
Yeah, great forum.
Was it?
Yeah.
Please tell me more on that.
Well, this is one that when I got the opportunity to be on the panel, I was the only male on the panel.
Okay.
And of course, when in that picture, when you guys posted that of the panel and saw the women's panel, there was me up there. I said, well, I got to explain why I'm here. Well, the reason I was really excited about being part of that is because our industry, we have a significant shortage in talented people to solve these very difficult and challenging problems. And so we're always looking for new talent. And I've been very fortunate in my career at NIST to have some of the great women in key leadership roles. From our NIST director, we've had 2 NIST directors that were female. Our lab director, Sita Furlani, was obviously female. And then our division chief for many years, Donna Dotson. And when it came time for me to retire and to pick somebody to follow on in my footsteps. One of my colleagues, Vicky Pelletieri, who I've known for years, she stepped right into that role. So I have kind of been around strong, smart, competent women my whole life, but that's not the case in all organizations. There's kind of a culture in our industry, it's still largely male dominated. Now, I don't know why that is. It could be just a cultural thing, but we need to encourage young women to get into the STEM sciences. And if you don't like the STEM area, there are lots of positions in cyber, policy related things. Wherever you have talent, we need you to come into this space because this problem set is so difficult and challenging. We need all different kinds of perspectives, looking at the problem, bringing in new perspectives, new ideas, and that comes from diversity of ideas and people. So that's why I was so excited, and it was a really great panel. We had a Q&A session, and the audience was really engaged. They were asking, we had to cut off the questions because we ran out of time, but they were all about it today, and that kind of energy. And I have to say, I was trying to count the number of men that showed up to that. There was probably 25% of the audience that were male.
Good. Okay.
So that's a great thing, and they're going to do more of those over time. This is just the initial seed that was planted, and that form's going to grow, I hope, over time. So.
I'm very happy to hear that. And I know from my own personal journey, it is the adaptability and integrity of so many of security practitioners that I have seen that it really is a very inclusive space compared to some others. And I am thankful that not only are there so many mentors like yourself and teachers and people who are way showers and who
Right.
have developed such phenomenal depth of know-how and skill and dedication. And yet I personally hold that within the security communities, there are a beautiful and hardcore advancing dedication to progress that transcends all other barriers.
I totally agree. And setting aside just the women's issue, but just the general community itself, the first thing I do, and anytime I speak anywhere, is I thank all the men and women who have been doing the heavy lifting in this business for decades.
Yeah.
It is incredibly difficult work. You get up every day, and if you're a CISO or an ISSO, first time there's a problem or a breach, they usually point to you and blame you for that. And I've always said, no, it's a senior leadership problem. They're just working for you. And they need to take that responsibility at the highest levels of any organization. But the dedication of the men and women of our profession is unmatched. I mean, it's highly stressful. The technology has been racing forward. Every time they think they have a good lockdown solution, they get a new component, new application, new person comes in. So their world is constantly changing, and they have to be very smart, capable, be tenacious, and be able to take those constant blows every day, and that contributes to the stress level. And that's why you see a lot of CISOs, the turnover rate is fairly high. It's hard work, and they're underappreciated. We need to pay them more and appreciate them more. And I never let them forget that, because I have the easy part of the problem. They have the tough part. Yeah.
Well, I want to express appreciation to you right now. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for bringing your fire and heart and passion to this discussion, and to all who are joining virtually. Please make sure to check out Dr. Ron Ross's keynote and all of his other proliferation of information that you have put out over the
Thank
years.
you.
And for our coverage of InfoSec World 2025, please be sure to visit securityweekly.com/ISW. I'm Mandy Logan, and thank you for joining us.